an impact on this world? Do you want to help kids live healthy, active lives? My name's Clayton Freck, and I'm the founder and CEO of Angel City Sports. And, my journey in disability started in the delivery room where I almost fainted. Kind of crazy story. My wife and I's first child, born just over 15 years ago, and we were really full of hope and excitement about what parenting could be, and she had a beautiful pregnancy, really beautiful, happy, healthy, amazing. And in the delivery room, when this little guy first came out, one of the first things I noticed was that he didn't have a hand. There was just like one finger on the left hand. And then I looked a little further and I realized the left leg wasn't formed properly. And like a wave of heat came over me and I thought I was going to faint. And I ended up grabbing the side of the bed and kind of looked this nurse in the eyes who probably been working there for 30, 40 years. And she just communicated this look like, it's going to be okay, get your act together. And fortunately for us, there were no other underlying health conditions. He was a perfectly happy, healthy little guy. And, that was the beginning of my journey in disability. And, we had a lot of questions about whether he'd be able to get a job, get married, really whether he'd be able to live a normal life. And for me as a father, I sort of thought that being a father was doing sports and, outdoors activities with my children. That's what my dad did with me. I think that's what my grandfather did with my dad. And so when Ezra was born, I kind of fell into like a funk. I would paddle out at my favorite surf spot, and I would just cry. I would cry because I didn't think I could do the things with my son that my father did with me. And I guess I thought it meant that I wouldn't be able to be a good father. I felt like I had somehow lost something. And, looking back, I think the good thing about like going through a little pain and a little struggle is hopefully it triggers some sort of reaction and response. And in my case, I started researching. I just started looking around, and were there amputee surfers out there? And I'm really fortunate because it was like the beginning of my journey in this world, and we got connected to the Challenged Athletes Foundation and met an amputee surfer from Brazil that literally changed my life, changed my perspective on everything. Because he was an amazing surfer named Pirata, and he surfs North Shore, Hawaii, and Bali, and he travels the world, and he's incredible. And we started to just get connected to the general, amputee and disabled community and learning more about it. And, I really set myself in motion to kind of, and with my wife, to become experts in disability to the best of our ability, and really to be expert parents, if that's such a thing, and figure out how do we make sure that he lives an optimized life, that he has access to everything that anyone else has. And he had some surgeries when he was 2.5 and 3 or 4 years old. We removed the lower leg. We had a little foot. We transplanted a toe to his left hand, so his left hand went from one finger to two, so we could oppose, and fit prosthetic legs a lot better. And in our case, he was able to mainstream in sports. Played club basketball, he swam, played soccer, football, all kinds of sports. Pretty incredible to do that on a running blade as an above knee amputee. Fast forward to when our son was about 8 years old, and at the time, I just wanted him to see what was out there, right, and start thinking about you know, were there other dreams that he could layer into his life plan, and we went to the Endeavor Games, and that was in Oklahoma. An amazing event, just incredible event. Met more Paralympians. We already connected to some, and I just got inspired. Like, let me recreate what the Endeavor Games are for people on the West Coast, people in California, people that couldn't travel, right, to Oklahoma for sport. And this wasn't even necessarily to compete in our case. We did compete, but it was really just to learn and do some clinics and get connected. So, and that literally was like the birth of Angel City Sports right there on the track in Oklahoma. And the more I've learned about the community, the more I've dug in, there's a few things that are really interesting. So first of all, the community of people living with a physical disability is really significant. So it's about 15% of the U.S. population. Another interesting thing about this community is it is facing a lot of discrimination. There is a lot of just bias and prejudice around people with disabilities, and so they run into that across the board in sports, in school, employment especially. And so when you look at some of our kind of metrics for the community, it's not that great, I would say. We have a significantly higher percentage of people living in poverty. People with disabilities are 3 times more likely to have a major health problem like heart disease or things like that. And it's very hard to get a job if you have a disability. And so that's all just kind of interesting background. And as I got started in building Angel City Sports back in 2013, what I realized about the adaptive sports landscape is there's really not much awareness around what adaptive sports are or even what the Paralympics are. So adaptive sports are just sports like any other sport that's been altered through a rule change or equipment or sometimes both to accommodate people with physical disabilities. And so, for example, wheelchair tennis, an amazing sport. People with spinal cord injuries play wheelchair tennis. They have a sport chair to get around the court, and they get 2 bounces to get to the ball. That's it. So it's really cool, really interesting. And the whole adaptive and Paralympic system is a system of fairness for athletes with disabilities because the athletes are grouped by disability. So fast forward to 2015, we got the first Angel City Games launched, and we've really been building the organization ever since then. So what we do is we do free training of athletes through our year-round clinics, mostly on the weekends. We offer almost free equipment loaners to athletes so they can just get started in their journey in sport. And we also do offer competitive opportunities, and really the flagship of our kind of competitive opportunities is the Angel City Games presented by the Hartford. So so that's kind of what Angel City does, and we serve kids, adults, and veterans, all ages, all skill and ability levels. So literally this is incredibly inclusive if you have a physical disability. And when I think about why did we even start this organization? What were we thinking? The basic idea of just getting access is important because there are very, very few programs out there. Secondly, we have to grow the awareness, right? We have to grow the awareness. I can build all the programs I want, but if I don't have the awareness and the athletes coming in, it's not going to work. And lastly, we try to create a value proposition so people want to continue and they want to really engage and participate. But at the end of the day, I believe kind of our core purpose at Angel City Sports is to create a sense of community and belonging. Because if you live with a disability, it can be a really isolated life that you live. It can feel, even if you're surrounded by other people, it can sometimes feel like you're alone. You're often the only person at your school or your work or whatever that has a physical disability. So that's really interesting, and I think that's a really important part of what we do. And I think if you can create a sense of belonging, you can sort of start working, right, and to build on that. You can start working on self-acceptance, self-love, self-confidence, and then goal setting, right, whether it's sport or beyond sport. And I have to tell you, I've seen it work over and over and over again. And honestly, like the best case study or example I can give you is my own son, Ezra. Again, born 15 years ago, and he's a happy, confident, goal-oriented young man. He made the U.S. Paralympic track team as a 14-year-old. He was the youngest athlete to compete at the World Championships, and he'll tell you, better than I can, sports has given him so much. It's given him an escape. It's given him a meditation place to sort of, just sort of get out of his own head. It's really given him an identity, which is super interesting, right? So if you can imagine your sort of first identity is something that you love, right? So if you love music, you're a musician, or, a concert goer or whatever, right? And if you're an athlete, right, you're an athlete. You're not a person with a disability first. You're actually an athlete first. And then you happen to have a disability and you happen to play adaptive or Paralympic sport. So that's kind of our story in a nutshell, kind of how we got where we are. And when I think about, kind of how far I've come in my journey, what I will tell you is there's just nothing better than the feeling of your children achieving their dreams. It's just, it's the best. It really is the best. I'm so proud of Ezra for his journey, and he's got big goals ahead of him. And the beautiful thing about what we've created with Angel City Sports is that anybody can support us and have that same feeling of helping someone else achieve their dreams. And with your support, you can help us find those athletes out there. We have created an athlete sponsorship program, so an adaptive athlete sponsorship program, which is a way for you to contribute and know that your dollars are going to support these amazing athletes like my son Ezra. So with that, thank you. Take care.